Hey guys, this is the first video of my series of the Torah and 8 common misunderstandings that most people have about the Torah. Now, the Torah in itself, okay, is nothing more than a Hebrew word that just simply means instruction, okay? Uh, so keeping that in mind, okay, remember that word. Torah means instruction. Throughout the history of Roman, Hebrew exile, Israelite exile, especially through the Grecian, where the Septuagint eventually came from, was derived. Um, it was during that time in which the Hebrew language um, had begun to, I'm not going to say uh, become diminished, but the influence of the Greek culture had begun to infiltrate throughout the Jewish learning of that time. And the reason why I say that is because anytime that the Israelites were in exile, okay, whether it be the Egyptian exile, the Babylonian, the Medo-Persians, Grecians, the Romans, some form, okay, of influence from that nation had always taken over in some way, shape, or form. Throughout the Egyptian exile, we see that the Israelites had become uh, very familiar with the ways of the Egyptians in their ways of worship, in their deities, and so on and so forth. So uh, that is evidenced by the golden calf worship at Mount Sinai. Now, this is not to discredit the Jews or the Israelites. This is just showing a historical significance that has taken place within Israelite exile. So, this first section that I'm going to be dealing with, deals specifically with the Torah and salvation. Now, the reason why I brought every bit of that other stuff up about Grecian exile and stuff like that is because the word law, namas or naman, and um, the Greek versions of the scriptures, whether it be the Septuagint or the New Testament, um, is a very big misnomer. People do not understand that word as it should be. So, um, uh, when we think of law, we think of something that is pressed against evildoers, lawbreakers, so on and so forth. It has a very negative connotation to it, whereas the word Torah is actually more of a positive, has a positive note to it. It has a positive feeling. When someone says Torah and they're talking about instructions, it's a very positive influence on an individual's life. So, probably one of the biggest um, passages of scripture that people use to try to negate the fact of observing Torah, or to discredit the Torah, saying, well, you can't keep it, or if you do keep it, then you are doing it to try to obtain salvation or work your way to heaven or stuff like that. Well, I'm here to say that that is in no wise the case. Acts chapter 15 is a very prominent verse and passage that people use to try to push this Torah for salvation issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through here one verse at a time, or a couple verses at a time, and just show how this is not the case, that um, the people at that time, the teachers of the law, uh, had attempted to um, do something with the Torah or the law, to make it more burdensome. Okay, so we're going to turn around and we're going to read. Now, of course, you guys, I have my Holy Bible. It is a King James version. Um, by the way, I'm looking at it. It is actually backwards on the screen, so I'm hoping it's not backwards on yours. Uh, so, and I don't mind the King James version. I don't mind any version of the Bible, but King James, because of its easy reference through the Strong's Concordance, uh, is my preferred version. Uh, every version has translational errors, no matter how you look at it. If you don't believe me, just pick up any Bible and compare it with the original Greek and Hebrew. So, and that means looking up definitions as well. It takes up a lot of time. So, now, as you can see in mine, right here, it says dispute over circumcision. Now, we're going to read Acts chapter 15, a couple verses. Now, specifically verse 1. Let's focus in on verse 1 here for a second. And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren and said, except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved. That's basically somebody saying, unless you do what the Torah says, or unless you're circumcised, well, you can't be saved. That's what some people would call Judaizers. Well, while it is true that people have correctly identified that, it's not very wise to present that. And the reason why I say that is because you do not want to deliberately offend people when presenting the scriptures, okay? It's one thing if you're preaching something and something that you say offends somebody, okay? But a very good topic for today is homosexuality, okay? You can go through the scriptures and you can turn around and read Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and talk about marriage and how this proves that God's marriage view is for one man and one woman. Okay? This is completely different than if you just simply come out and say you're going to hell for being a homosexual, or you can't be saved because you're a homosexual, or whatever the case may be. That's completely different. So our presentation of our doctrines, of our teachings, has to be completely on point, because we do not want to just come straight out with our words and say you're dead wrong. That's not what we're called to do. Okay, so let's see what verse 2 says. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. And being brought on their way, verse 3, by the church, they passed through Phoenice and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles, and they caused great joy unto all the brethren. This is a direct link, okay, to Acts chapter 10, which, by the way, is not speaking about food. It is speaking about the conversion of the Gentiles coming unto God, first and foremost by Cornelius and his 3 messengers who were sent to Peter. So the conversion of the Gentiles is what is the focal point of this entire passage. The conversion of the Gentiles, circumcision, and salvation. These are 2 big issues that are going to be looked at here. Is the Torah to be observed as a matter of salvation? Well, let's look. And when they were come up to Jerusalem, they were received of the church and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all the things that God had done to them. But there rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees, which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. Now, the Jews have a very unique way of looking at the Torah. For example, here is a legitimate question. Would God give you anything? Would God give you a command knowing that you could not follow? Okay? Would God give you a direct command that He knew that you were completely unable to accomplish? The answer is no. God is not going to lay on you any more than what you can handle. So if He gives you a command, or if He gives you 1,000 commands, or 1,000,000 commands, He knows that you are able to complete those things, those tasks, those observances, or whatever the case may be. Okay? So it's not impossible. It's our choice. Our choice determines on whether we obey or whether we disobey. We have a choice to choose between the two. What did Joshua say? Excuse me. Before he went and took the Israelites into the promised land, he said, "Choose ye this day whom you will serve. Either you will choose Baal and the gods of the foreign nations in whose land you are about to enter, or you will follow Yahweh. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord thy God." So, verse 6, and the apostles and elders came together to consider of this matter. Verse 7 through 11, Peter just basically kind of goes through and just very briefly describes his experience with Cornelius and so on and so forth. Verse 12, then all the multitude kept silence and gave audience to Barnabas and Paul, declaring what miracles and wonders God had wrought among the Gentiles through them. And after they had held their peace, James answered, saying, Men and brethren, hearken unto me. Simon hath declared how God at the first did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name. And to this agree the words of the prophets, as it is written, after this I will return and will build the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up, that the residue of men might seek after the Lord, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, saith the Lord, who doeth all these things. Known unto God are all his works from the beginning of the world. Wherefore my sentence is, that we trouble them not, which from among the Gentiles are turned to God. The word trouble there actually comes from the Greek word which means to annoy them further, to press them, to keep pushing on, to bring annoyance to. But that we write unto them that they abstain from 4 things: pollutions of idols, fornications, and from things strangled, and from blood. We're going to stop there. This was just part of what he said. Okay, this was the main point of what he said. But there's one more verse that we will read here in a second. I want somebody to show me throughout the entire Old Testament where it says that salvation will come to you by the observance of the law. One verse. Show me one definite verse that says that salvation is come unto you by the observance of the Torah. The verses which say, and you shall live by them or in them, do not count. That does not signify salvation in any point. So I'm just throwing that out there for anybody that watches this video. Now, the Pharisees had a very unique way of annoying the people with traditions and laws. Keep in mind, okay, that the law, which is written in the Old Testament, are not traditions. If you go back and you read every single one of those laws, you will always see before every paragraph, and it's clearly visible, where it says, "And God spoke, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, tell the children of Israel, speak these things unto the children of Israel." God spoke these first. Our Master Yahweh spoke these things first before Moses even passed them down. So where did these laws, these Torah, the pluralized form of Torah, where did these Torah instructions come from? They came from God. They came from Almighty Yahweh himself. So who are we to turn around and say, well, these are traditions of man? No, they're not. Perhaps we need to go back and we need to study like we should. Okay? So these laws, these commandments, even the traditions of or the laws in which Mary and Joseph followed concerning Christ in Luke chapter 2. The circumcision, which was written in the law of the Lord, the sacrifice which was brought as a result of a male child being born, was written in the law of the Lord. A male child who opens the matrix or the womb is to be called holy, as it is written in the law of the Lord. This is not man's tradition. The last part of this passage says, "For Moses of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogue every Sabbath day." Why would James speak that? Nobody ever reads that verse in connection with this passage. Why? Because it presents that the Gentiles learned about the laws of Moses, they learned about the festivals, they learned about the ways of God, the way to worship, the way to bring holiness to his name, how to properly treat your neighbor. What laws are there that prevent injury or that reduce injury to keep an individual from being harmed, so on and so forth. So these things are very important for us to learn, but in no way, shape, or form are the laws of the Bible ever to be considered as part of salvation. No part of the scriptures are ever to be considered as a requirements for salvation. Okay, so as always, if you guys have any questions, don't be hesitant to ask. I always enjoy your questions and comments. So, Behashem Yeshua HaMashiach, Shalom. In the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, Shalom, and God bless. And always go back and read your scriptures and double check what I say, because I may be wrong and you may find something else that might enlighten me. Never take my word for anything. Take care, guys. God bless.